Ghana for Mechachiamo. Wezo, thank you for joining the conversation. And today I'm going to be very quick, just like last week, because there's a lot to digest. But I'm continuing, like I told you last week, on Blunt Thoughts, my Manifesto Series, helping you read between the lines ahead of election 2024. So today I'm bringing you part 2 of my Manifesto Series, helping you read between the lines ahead of election 2024. I just want to start from this premise. The latest African Economic Outlook released by the African Development Bank Group has detected what it describes as desynchronization between economic growth performance and sustainable development, which suggests that Africa's current developmental model is not fit for purpose. That includes Ghana. According to the document, the existing development model, which relies heavily on resource extraction without value addition, urgently requires a complete overhaul if the continent is to catch up with other regions. In fact, quoting them, they say the urgency is such that under a business as usual scenario, it could take today African countries more than a century on average, that is about 180 years, or a median of 86 years, to transition to a high income status. That's according to the report. Africa remains the second most economically unequal region in the world after Latin America and the Caribbean. Why am I setting the tone for the conversation with this? I'm telling you this because as we go to the polls, we must look ahead, look into the future. We are about a century behind as a continent. When are we going to catch up? The people in the other jurisdictions we try to emulate and all of that, they are far ahead of us. It means their children will be ahead of yours. It means their development will be ahead of yours. It means their life, human development index, how long even they live. And it shows. Go to the indices. Look at the life expectancy in Ghana, in other parts of Africa. Compare that to some of those developed countries. We need to do more. Health, education, and all of these. And that is why I'm starting from the standpoint today of governance and corruption. Come to the slides with me. Now, the MPP versus the NDC, we are juxtaposing their manifestos. 3 key areas we are looking at today. If you look at the number of promises on these areas, the MPP has 41 in the current manifesto. The NDC has 33 in its current manifesto. Let's get the details. Next slide. We're going very quickly, so stay with me. The number of promises in there, 19 as far as corruption only corruption. 19 for the MPP, NDC 15. And we know some of what was said when Akufo-Addo was becoming, he was contesting to be president about corruption and everything. 19 and 15. But if you go to governance, the similar tickets, this is what they have to say. Don't worry, I'll go back to corruption. We're taking it step by step. What is the MPP saying? They say in dealing with the governance issues, they will cap the number of ministers at 50. They will initiate a process of reforms on ex gratia payments. That they will reinitiate the process of getting MMDCs elected. They will pass the Conduct of Public Officers Bill and amend the SIGA Act to reflect the new rules. There are similarities because if you look at the NDC's manifesto as well, they say they'll reduce the size of government to 60. That is ministers. Scrap payment of ex gratia. Here they say what? Initiate a process of reform. They say they will scrap it. Elect MMDCs on a non-partisan basis. These ones say they will reinitiate the process of getting MMDCs elected. They say we'll go straight for elections. Pass the Conduct of Public Officers Bill, amend the SIGA Act to reflect the new rules. Similar. Next slide. Then the top 5 promises of the MPP on governance. Cap the number of ministers at 50, reinitiate the process of getting MMDCs elected through universal adult suffrage, delink the creation of districts from constituencies to end the automatic increments in the size of parliament. So once that happens, then there will be more members of parliament. Pay living allowances to paramount chiefs, divisional chiefs, and queen mothers. I have to stop here on the MPP's manifesto on governance, point 4. Now, over here, right, I feel there's a problem. What is that problem? It could foster patronage. I believe it is a very fertile ground for corruption, this point. A further erosion of the proper role of chiefs and their non-participation in open partisan politics as espoused in our 1992 Constitution. This will create a patronage system, this point 4, which will make issues like Galamsey even more problematic and difficult to deal with because these chiefs will feel beholden to and powerless against the system, as well as to specific individuals. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, do you? And that is the problem I have with this. Because already we are trying to decouple. It's not that chiefs shouldn't participate in politics, but partisan politics openly. Now, if you say you're going to pay living allowances to paramount chiefs, divisional chiefs, and queen mothers, what are you doing? We will foster a system of patronage. And so now the chiefs will feel, regardless of who is in power, I am beholden to this person. We don't need that. I don't think so. This is my opinion. Then initiate a process of reforms on ex gratia payment. Let's go to the next one. Now, the top 5 promises of the NDC on governance: reduce the size of government by appointing no more than 60 ministers, scrap ex gratia, realign and merge MDAs to eliminate duplication, address disparities between Article 71 office holders and the wider public service. This has been a long-standing problem. Article 71 office holders, and that feeds into the ex gratia problem. The boons they get versus you and me and others who may be in public service and what they get at the end of the day. Then review the regulatory framework for political party financing. This one here too has been a long-standing problem. And that is also part of why we can't get that third force we've been talking about. Because they simply don't have the mettle. They don't have the wherewithal to be able to deal with the juggernauts like the MPP and the NDC. So this is another thing we really have to look at. But again, even though the NDC is making these important points, we ought to ask, in the past, what have they said? They mentioned some of these before. What happened? So let's give them the benefit of the doubt that these are going to be looked at. What shape, what form is it going to take? These are concerns. Because mind you, how our political parties are financed also affects our governance. You can have some rich person somewhere, maybe a criminal, funding any of these parties. And in the end, when they come to power, they will lobby. And you and I, we will be affected. Next slide. Now, if you look at the top 5 promises of the MPP on corruption, place limits on foreign official travel by ministers, CEOs, and senior civil servants. We tried this at some point. Did it really work? Annually publish the list of all beneficiaries of public scholarships. I like this, especially on the back of some of what we've seen. The Sarah Safos and the rest, at their stage, still benefiting from these scholarships, going to Harvard and the rest. I don't have a problem if you want to go to Harvard, but on state funding, seriously? So publishing this list, I agree with it, and it should be consistent. Fully integrate the National Electronic Procurement Platform. Establish an e-marketplace for public procurement similar to Korea's online e-procurement system. I like this as well, but the devil is in the detail. For the sake of time, I'll not go in there. You see, it's nice sometimes you can just look at, oh, they are doing this. Yeah, let's replicate. But do you have the systems? You know, Mr. Digital or Dr. Digital. It's nice that you're talking about all these digital things, but Charlie, let's slow down. Because some of these things, if you look at the originator, the blueprint, versus what we are trying to do, it's not to say it can't be done, but it's the framework there. You don't just go and put up a building. There must be a foundation. Do you have the foundation? That's the question. Enact a Corrupt Practices Act to consolidate all anti-corruption and corruption-related legislation and offenses. That's what the MPP is saying. What's the NDC saying on that point? Let's go to the NDC. Launch Operation Recover All Loot. So this is kind of like President Trump draining the swamp first time, and maybe even this time. All those who have been corrupt and all of that. I pray that happens. If the NDC wins and they don't do this, if they win, we have to hold them to account, right? Because they say they will launch an Operation Recover All Loot. And only God knows some of the scandals that have happened, and nothing fed off from there. Of course, it must be done in a justicial manner, according to the law. But legislation to prohibit political appointees, politically exposed persons, and all serving public officials from purchasing state assets. I completely agree with this. I don't know why till now, up to this point, we've not done this. Makes no sense. Set up an inquiry into the matter of looted state lands. This is another thorny issue. Conduct a forensic audit and an inquiry into the National Cathedral scandal. Another issue. I don't see how we could have pumped that much money into a pit, right? And then set up an independent value for money office to scrutinize government procurements above $5 million as Parliament may decide. But why $5 million? Because this could still lead to corruption. Then people will find ways of, getting contracts that are below the sum of money, which means then it will fall below the bar of scrutiny. Yes, there are some measures to scrutinize, but if you say this, then how about those less than $5 million? What are we saying? I think it should encompass everything. No matter, even if it's one cedi, $1, and it's going to you. Let's deal with it. Now, if you come to the legend, right, All right, so let's go back a bit. Let's go back a bit. Let's go back a bit. It appears we are going forward instead of good. So let's go to the next slide now. If you look at Ghana's corruption index score trend, the indices, you would see that, and 0 is the lowest, 100 is the highest, right? In 2012, 45 under Mahama, 46 in 2013, 48 in 2014, 47 in 2015, 43 in 2016, 40 in 2017. Of course, the higher you go, you know what that means. The better, right? But then you come to 2017. It falls to 40, right? And then it starts climbing again. 2018, 41, 2019, 41. Then we hit 43, and we've been there practically ever since. Up to what? 2023, this year. If you look at the trend, and that is why sometimes the NDC will say that, you know, their worst score is the MPP's best score. But if you look at the tail of the tape, we are not doing well. We are not doing well when it comes to corruption. Honestly, we are not. We're still in the 40s. We've not got out of it. There's not been a monumental shift in terms of our corruption score. But if you do the math, let's go to the next slide. If you do the math, again, 0 being the lowest, 100 being the highest, you would realize that the average score, when you take the MPP and the NDC, blue being the MPP, 42, average score for the NDC, 43.5. If you pick the lowest score, 40 for the MPP, for the NDC, 39. The highest score, though, here, 43 for the MPP, 48 for the NDC. And if you do the net after 7 years, so before and after, that is what we're doing. The net score after 7 years, you would get a 0 score for the MPP and 2 for the NDC. In other words, while you may say that one is slightly above the other, I don't see much of a shift. It should be drastic. We should see a major difference, especially for a government that campaigned on managing the economy and dealing with corruption. Next slide. Then you look at the biggest anti-corruption tickets. The MPP is saying Office of the Special Prosecutor. In fact, as far as that is concerned, there's no mention of it in their 2024 manifesto. It's missing. We've done it. Again, the NDC too. National Anti-Corruption Action Plan launched by Mahama as Vice President in December 2009, but there's no mention of this in the 2024 manifesto. Why? Why? To both political parties. Next slide. Then you look at anti-corruption agencies or ministries or departments and the focus on Shraj. We'll look at a number of them. If you look at the first year of the MPP versus the 8th year, in millions of Ghana cedis, 46 million was given to Shraj. Then it was increased. In the 8th year, we are looking at 88.3 million. That's an increment of 91.95%. But if you come to the NDC, when it comes to Shraj, 4.2 million in their first year, okay? I'm talking about, and then if you come to the 8th year, by the 8th year, it had shot up to 30.5 million, accounting for an increment of 626.19%. It's not so much in the figures, because if you look at 88 versus 30, but it's about the increment over time, the quantum. Next slide. That is for Shraj. And I'm doing this so that you can sit down and make your own assessment. How we have treated the different anti-corruption agencies, whether we've done enough for them. You've heard the OSP cry. Are we doing enough for them to actually make them work? Then you come to the audit service, 2009 to 2016, and then 2017 to 2024. So this is 2009 to 2016. You will see that the NDC, first year, they gave 24.6 million. By their last year, they were given 140 million, 469% increment. If you come to the MPP, first year, 2017, 186.5 million. So that's an increment on the 140 million, about 46.5 million, right? By their 8th year, 633.7 million. That accounts for 239.8% in terms of increment. Next slide. The next body we are looking at, the Attorney General's office, or the AG's office, right? Now, if you look at 2009 to 2016 versus 2017 to 2024, Here, it's interesting because in the first year, 118 million, but by the 8th year auditing, you had 1,560, right? In millions of Ghana cedis, that's like 1.56 billion. That's a 1,222% increment. But when it comes to the NDC, in their first year, 15 million. In the 8th year, 74.7. That's a 398% increment. In this situation, you would see that more had been committed to this enterprise audit, right? Next slide. Then you have the constitutional review exercise. I bring it up because both parties have spoken about it. You remember the 2010 Constitutional Review Commission and everything in between. Till today, we've done nothing with that document. Absolutely nothing. And both parties are at fault. If you look at the committee size, we had 9 people, including my very own Professor Raymond Atuguba. Public submissions, 50,000. The cost to us, taxpayer, $6 million. $6 million. Next slide. Next slide, please. Now, if you go to the implementation, the NDC, 2010 to 2016, 6 years. Yes, they started a white paper, and then there are claims that some things happened and pushbacks and all of that. The bottom line is no implementation, zero implementation. So when these parties talk about these things and come and, oh yeah, we will, why didn't you when you had the opportunity? But how about the MPP? An even more glorious opportunity because, yes, you've had all this period. What was done about it? Also nothing. 7 years, no implementation till today. So the $6 million we spent, who should come and pay for it? Who should pay for it? Next slide. Then, what is the NDC's track record when it comes to this constitutional review? 2010, follow-up on the implementation of the Constitutional Review Committee. 2016, implement government white paper on Constitutional Review Committee. 2020, follow up the implementation of the Constitutional Review Committee. And 2024, establish Constitutional Review Implementation Committee. If you look at the manifestos, these are some of the things they've been telling us. You can say that, well, after this point, they didn't have the opportunity to be in government. But can we trust them if they get power to implement it? That's the question. You answer that for yourself. Next slide. Next slide. And if you go to the selected governance tickets when it comes to the election of MMDCEs, now, it started in 2017, stalled in 2019. The NDC has no record. The constitutional reviews, no record for the MPP. The NDC started one in 2010, but the implementation failed. They passed the Conduct of Public Officers Bill, introduced the Asset Declaration in 2017, but NDC, no record. Let's go very quickly. Next slide. Now, you look at mining, and this is a crucial point, right? And these will go very quickly. The next NPP government will, according to the MPP, ensure the application, processing, and licensing of small-scale mining ends at the Minerals Commission. Bus stop. That is what they are saying. Feasible? You decide. Next slide. The next MPP government will scale up the use of the mercury-free gold catcher machine technology for profitable and sustainable small-scale mining. How many years have we been told this? And what is the implementation? Actually, we're told a few were in the system and all that. Looking at the illegal mining scourge, we don't see this, Dr. Vice President. We don't see it. Where's the gold catcher? So if it can't be done now, what can we believe that it will be done later? Next slide. The next MPP government will aggregate and utilize the reclamation fund to implement land reclamation programs. Next slide. Next slide. Then, what is the NDC saying when it comes to illegal mining or focus on mining? Wage a war against the use of cocoa farms for illegal mining and reclaim degraded cocoa lands. That's a tall order. It's not going to be easy. Can they do it? Question for you. Next slide. Ensure that mining operations are not conducted in unapproved areas, such as water bodies, and that the concession holders rehabilitate impacted areas. Next slide. Facilitate equipment financing and mining inputs, research and standardization, gold recovery optimization, and post-mining land reclamation services. What this means to me is that there will have to be a lot of reform, especially including LI 2462, to deal with some of these issues, because it's still alive and kicking, LI 2462. Next slide. But then, as we focus on the economy and get ready to wind down, the number of promises made here, 186 for the MPP, 112 for the NDC. What are they saying? Let's go. Next slide. Emphasize tax cuts and exemptions, amnesties, reforms to the VAT regime, aiming to simplify and remove cascading taxes. The NDC says they'll focus more on reforming the tax regime and remove levies, and then a comprehensive reform of the VAT system and more. But what exactly are we looking at? Next slide. The next slide will give us some information. They will abolish MPP, betting tax and e-levy. Now who bring them? That's my question. Now who bring them? NDC abolish e-levy, COVID levy, betting winnings levy, and emissions levy. The why didn't come, but it's there. Next slide. But you see, when they say these things, you must do the opportunity cost, the cost-benefit analysis. Because if they say that it's generating income, right, where will you get the income from? You see, these are realistic things. If you look at how much the COVID-19 levy is giving us, 13.91 billion, e-levy 8.27 billion, betting tax 5.1 billion. I am for taking away some of these taxes. I am for it. But at the same time, the party proposing that will take it off. What will you use to replace it? That's the question. Something else we must look at. Next slide, as we delve into the economy. Create over 1 million jobs through investment in the digital economy. That's what the MPP is saying. We've heard this ad nauseum. NDC generate 2 million, so multiply that by 2, jobs through their 24-hour economy policy and other programs. But the tail of the tape when it comes to unemployment. Next slide. Next slide. If you look at the unemployment rate according to the World Bank, right, there was a movement from 5.4% 2010 to 2013 to 2.2%, then a shoot up in 2015 to 6.8%, then a fall in 2017, and since that time, 3.4, 3.2, 3.1. But some go as far, even when you're talking about youth unemployment, to over 13%. And that is one of the things that the NDC will harness, that even where they were versus where we are now, comparisons can't be made. Next slide. Now, we'll be concluding shortly. Stable exchange rate and inflationary control. The MPP is promising you, the voter, this is what, from the 2nd, then the 7th, this is what they are promising you. Bring inflation down to single digits by 2025, supported by exchange rate stability and effective monetary policies. For me, if you asked me, confidence in this, I don't know, because of where we are. The NDC is saying, stabilize the cedi to curb inflationary pressures, reducing import reliance on essential goods. But we've also seen how our cedi fluctuated under their term. Whom do we believe? Next slide. If you look at the trajectory, the exchange rate, Ghana cedi to the dollar, in 2009, right after Akufo, it was 1.24. By 2014, it was 2.11. That is less than 1 cedi added on. By 2017, 3.97, about 2 cedis added on. By 2022, we're at 5.88. Let's say another 2+ cedis added. 13 cedis, and now we hit a peak of 16.4 and 15.5, where currently we are standing. Next slide. So we are concluding. The average annual inflation rate, 2009 to 2023, if you look at it, just look at the percentage. 19, the 10s, 11s, and all the way to 40%, 2023, 40.30%, according to the Ghana Statistical Service. Next slide. And then the debt management issues, just to glaze through it, they are focusing on successful agreements made with various creditor groups, like we've seen discussed. But then the NDC is talking about strategic buffers and a sinking fund to manage future resources. We've had the sinking fund logic. Where did it go? They could say that, well, the MPP took over, and that is why we are where we are. But realistically, what will this mean? Next slide. Then, total government debt. You know, we've moved from, in billions of Ghana cedis, 2008, from 8, by 2012, 19, you've added about 11 to that. By 2016, 122, you've added about 102 to that. But then we shot up to 291 billion, and now we are standing at, in 2024, 761 billion Ghana cedis. Look at the trajectory, 2008. Look at where we are. Next slide. And this is the final slide. We are concluding. In terms of the World Bank ease of doing business rankings, because this feeds into the very point I made about the fact that we are about 100 years behind the rest of the world. You look at 2008, Ghana's rank out of 190 countries, 87th. 2012, 63rd. We had done quite a bit here. By 2016, we had fallen to the 114th position in terms of ease of doing business. As of 2020, we stood at 118th. So this is what the parties are saying. And these are the realities, the facts that we've put together for you. Listen, come voting day, whether it's the 2nd or the 7th for you, know what to do. And that's why we are putting this exercise together. My name is Benjamin Akako. These have been my blunt thoughts shared with you, raw, hot, unedited, undiluted. God bless Ghana and make her great and strong.